I'm laughing because Chris doesn't think during our introductions. Anyway.
You're welcome.
Still.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Speculative Speculations. I'm Varsha.
I'm Jared.
Steve.
And I'm Chris.
I'm Dan.
And this is a series where we talk about speculative stories in all their forms, except when we don't. And today we're going to talk about Children of Memory. We're going to continue our read-through of it. We ended at the end of the 6th section with the new lift. And the short story for today, as we work our way through the big book of science fiction, is Let Me Live in a House by Chad Oliver. The next story coming up for next week is The Star by Arthur C. Clarke. And we are going to be reading through the end of part 9 of Children of Memory for next week. With that, let's get into Children of Memory, which I guess started with another lift section, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she went to visit the witch. Is that what happened in that section, or was it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the one.
Yeah.
Yes. What did you guys
But
think?
then also there was the execution and other things, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot happened in that lift section.
I can be the first to say it. Man, I really like these 3 parts. I mean, all of them for different reasons. Like, really liked it.
Yeah, I think this is sort of shaping up to become maybe my favorite in the trilogy. It is different for sure. Like it is doing things that the others didn't. And I suppose the intervention we got of the Raven evolution, which also is different because we find out that the Raven evolution is not from the uplift virus.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. And yeah, I love these sections quite a lot too. Yeah, I enjoyed them. And I'm a big Lift fan. I love what he's done with the building of the mystery. There's enough that he's dropping here and there to really hold my interest and really speculate about what might be going on. And especially the section towards the end, I think it raised a lot of questions
Mm-hmm.
that, this could just go in so many different directions right now. I'm almost like, it's pretty mysterious. Like, it's not like a deep, horrifying, like existential mystery, maybe a little bit, but it's there, and I love it. I'm really enjoying the book so far.
I thought they were pretty good sections. I'm also pretty. I'm just gonna go over my criticisms first, so then I can just say the things I liked. I'll just get that over with, because I feel like I'm becoming more and more like. I feel like an editor. I'm like, okay, if you do this and that, it becomes so much better. You know,
Yeah.
It's like if instead of putting all the parts from Miranda's perspective before, if instead she just did the lift part up until the execution and then they transforming and then went back, I think it would have been a lot more interesting, because then we don't know that these people are like aliens and octopus and we're like, oh shit, what's happening, right, when they start transforming at then. And it would be like kind of like a twist, right? Because you're thinking all these people are crazy, there's no such thing as an outsider, and then you see them transforming, you're like, wait a second, maybe they're right? So I think it would add something more interesting, because right now, as it is right now, the perspective of all the people, they're like, oh, I don't like outsiders, so we're trying to find the goon squad and whatever. It's like, it's a bit too like a stereotype, like a straw man or something. It's like they're obviously bad. There's no nuance to it. You know what I mean? Like, you could make it more nuanced and a bit more interesting, making like their perspective slightly more reasonable by reshuffling some of his perspective and make the reader think also about it, instead of just putting it in this very black and white setup from the child is smart and she knows what's right, because she's not corrupted by she's not an adult and whatever. Like, that's a very typical setup, I guess. And I just feel it could have been done a bit better if they did it the other way.
Interesting.
Yeah. That, and also, again, the fact that in the last chapter they call them Liv and Miranda, again, even though we're different people, as far as I can see, I can't imagine they're the same people. Maybe Miranda is the same person, but it also makes no sense, I think.
I'm
Because in
pretty
the previous
sure Miranda's the same person.
but in the previous story she says she comes from the farm.
Yes, but
Oh,
this is like we went back in time to a couple of
Yes.
generations, right?
No, I mean like the person she's like the person she's displaying is a different person. That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if she looks physically different, but there's that moment when she thinks to herself that she can sleep through a lot of the evolution and she can keep waking
Yeah.
up in parts. So, I mean, at least the Nod creature, I guess, is the same. And
Yeah.
also,
I assume.
yeah, okay. I'm pretty sure it is. But also the what was I saying? Yeah, I think we're several generations apart between
Yeah.
the two lifts, right? So this new
Are
Miranda
we?
could.
We must
Is
be.
she not 26 in both iterations, though? Like getting 26 landfall years? 10
It makes
Earth
no
years?
sense otherwise.
I would agree with you,
Okay.
however.
Do you have a theory? Do you have a theory as to
I
what's
think-
Gimme.
happening?
I'll let other people go first. So there's two possibilities for me, right? What's very clear to me is that Liv being Holt's granddaughter means that she's not biological grand relation. I think she's almost certainly either a construct or somebody else's child from the thing. Now, this is where it gets weird. Now, this is me being wild. There's no way they reckon there's two settlements on this planet. I think these are two different, because the people around Liv in both stories are different. So you've got R. Kelly, who I can't get out of my head. I was listening to this bit in the audiobook going, singing every time you mentioned R. Kelly and Uncle Mulder. And then you have, Miranda and everybody else on the other side. I think these are two different civilization setups, right? And Liv is the common thing, being like an almost artificial or clone kind of person. So she's like the test subject of both, who sort of never seems to age, or if she doesn't age, she's just like this part, which is why the birds know she's important, and also why, if she's met the witch before in the second story, she should remember in the first one. It can't be the same Liv.
Yeah.
Or
But-
the witch doesn't want to tell her that it's. I mean,
All
I
possible.
kind of agree with you on that continuity of Liv theory. Wait, was it that it's two different colonies at the same time, or across
what I
time?
I think it's at the same time, two different colonies. I think I think it might be two different lifts, because
Yeah.
both of those sections start with Amir now. Like that,
Mm.
it's not like
Yeah.
saying Amir in the past or in the future, like he's done with other iterations of the books.
Right. The first part implies that it's been like many generations since the ship arrived. So how can Captain Holt still be there?
In one iteration.
I don't know, why are they both now? It's
Yeah.
The
Like
chronology
part
and the
5.
time is the big question here. Like it's the bit
right.
that you can't make sense of, because even the witch, so to speak, says you couldn't be his granddaughter because of the timeline.
And
Yeah.
like, because part 5 is Miranda previously. She was approaching
Yeah.
Amir, and we get all that info dump history about the Corvids and stuff, and yeah.
Then how can Miranda be in two places at the same time? Unless it's like two different Nod organisms that have the same, experiences. Unless that's how it...
she's the alien.
But she's
Unless
the
there's
shapeshifter.
Yeah. But there must be two Mirandas then.
Well, again, her surname is Lane, right? So she's Issa. Isn't she related to Issa then? From the previous books? And they have been taken over by this, the shape-shifting aliens from Children of Ruin. So theoretically, they could probably split, or have some sort of divided existence of some sort. So there could be two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
Miranda herself is a copy in the first place, right, of a different Miranda. So that would make sense. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
No, like 'cause it's implied in the first part. There's been many generations since, and even the people observe, even Miranda observing him is saying, "Oh, they went through like the culture shift and all those things, and now their civilization is sort of dying out because the terraforming." And the other part, the last part, they're like, "Oh, we just brought the trees in. We just have all the stuff from the ship. It's people are still being
That's
rescued
right.
from the ship, right?" So it's kind of like I can't make it make sense.
What
You know?
if? So I don't know, the longevity technology the aliens have is, of course, like the bioengineering and whatnot. But what if Holt is just like simply going back into suspension chambers for, I don't know, a few
Yeah.
centuries at a time?
Mhm.
And then it could be that both colonies are, like, there are two colonies. Then Holt might be actively populating the second colony, and the first colony, like, I don't know, he went back and forth for whatever reason. But
Yeah.
if that is,
Maybe, yeah.
Why wouldn't Miranda know about the second colony though if she has another like clone of herself in there? Then they should know about
well,
everything that's
it's
going on,
not
right?
clear whether the clones are communicating yet, right? Like, for whatever reason, they have sort of seeded themselves into the population
Mm.
at various times. And they did say that they're not communicating externally. They're just keeping some weird slate things where they're storing information locally to
Yeah.
upload later.
It also could be a bit like the Corvid relationship, where they are two halves of the same being, like this
Hmm.
Glibian Goblin thing, where one is the decision maker and one has the memory, if you know what I mean. So it sort of sets that duality there in the Corvids, which is sort of where my theory comes from, is that there's duality kind of all over the place then.
Ooh, I like that. Because he usually has a human-ish parallel for whatever he's exploring. And the Corvid thing, like, we have to talk about that. That's incredibly interesting. And yeah, maybe this is the way of getting to the human parallel. I don't know.
And the Corvids were complaining that the humans were using the same names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought it was because of generations going by, but maybe they're using the same names in two different places, and that's confusing them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Because maybe the crews are the only people that really see both, right, places. And one of the crews knows that Liv is special because she's the only person that's in both that is not part of the survey team or otherwise. Like, that's what this girl's important.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they must have known when they arrived in their spaceship, right? They must have seen. I'm sure they scanned the planet, right? Like in the part where they're arriving, they say there's like a signal coming from the planet, right?
Who do you mean, sorry?
The octopus slash human slash nod slash spiders.
So the humans should have known that.
No. The guys, they are uplifted creatures coming to the planet in their spaceship, like in chapter 3 or something, right? They arrived and were like, "Oh, there's nothing here. It didn't happen," and they're like, "Oh no, there's a signal here." Right, so they must have known what was happening before going down, right? I can't believe they just didn't check.
So
I guess we don't know why they're stuck there. So.
At the end of part 5, Kern says she detected signals from the planet, plural.
As did Holt in part 1 as well. I think they said detected a signal on the other side of the planet too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've been trying to figure out whether the signal that Holt got was these guys because they landed before them somehow, or something else altogether. And I thought at first that they were the colony. That's what they detected, which could still be true. Like, in the case of two colonies, that could be true. In the case of we went back in time, could be true because the colony was in its second generation. But that would mean that Holt wouldn't have seen them if they came afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Kern's ship arrived before everyone else. Maybe.
Yes.
Would that be possible? I guess it would be. Yeah, no, that would be possible because it's very far away, and their new ship travels faster than light. So all this stuff in the previous books could have happened while this ship was traveling still to the planet, and they kind of crashed into it before. There was some remnant of the original terraforming, and they arrived there before, and they crash landed or something, and they couldn't get out until. But then they wouldn't have lived this long because I can't believe the crows lived this long unless they went to some sort of again. They could have gone into cryo sleep again, possibly.
Yeah, they mentioned that age is no matter to this generation of people. But we don't know the technology backing it. I guess bioengineering, that's the...
But I don't think the spiders and the octopus and whatever have super long life. Has it ever been mentioned? I don't think so.
Yeah,
Not directly, I don't think.
I don't think
What,
so.
many years?
They have, because the spiders have the collective memory
Yeah.
thing going
Yeah.
on.
I guess,
uh,
but is it possible that the ones we see one time are just they got just got the collective memories, the understandings from the previous guys that crash landed? I don't think so, because how are they going to reproduce? Something's
I
gonna end
got
up,
this
but hopefully.
sense. I got the sense that they could build themselves new bodies when one of them starts to die. Because Miranda could bioengineer herself, and it seemed to be something that Kern could do too. But
Miranda's
that
different.
yeah, Miranda's different, but also it sounded like that's a side effect of something the humans were able to do for themselves. They didn't build that technology especially for her.
I thought Miranda
But I
was
could be
because she
wrong,
was
but-
the nod organism, right? Which never dies. It's just
She's the nod organism, but she's wearing a bioengineered body. Like they told us specifically that
yeah.
the reason she
So it's
has
like
a
an
body is
android
like
sort of thing.
yeah.
But I mean, the spiders and the
course,
octopus
yeah.
are not androids; they're just themselves
Yeah.
inside other sort of suits.
So, do you think? Okay, so sort of newish topic, but related subject. The you know how the spiders and the octopuses are in human bodies now. So, illusion. Let's discount that because like that's just not interesting, unless one of you thinks it is. But the other options. So you know how Liv keeps thinking that they are among us. Do you think and the first witch claims that she's keeping demons away from them. Do you think that there's some sort of like shape-shifting creatures? And she does tell warn Liv about they might be among you. And if that's the case, do you think these guys are also they adopted their shape-shifting technology somehow or have been taken over by said shape-shifting technology? Or do you think the fact that they're wearing human skin comes from just bioengineering, which is somewhat interesting, but not quite as much as the shapeshifters theory?
Some suits,
Well,
but I can't prove it.
Gothy and what's the other one?
Gethly.
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 Deathly.
Gothy and Gethly. Yeah. They shapeshifted in front of Liv, and so I'm wondering if is that through bioengineering, or are we going to find out sometime in the future here that those two corvids were so curious that they invited the nod organism into themselves? We haven't, I'm just guessing here. I'm speculating about the future here, and I'm wondering if they was, because they seem to just like be completely curious about everything when they were on the ship and all that stuff, and they wanted to take apart everything. Would they then want to take apart or be a part of the nod organism to find out more about it? And would that lead to their shape-shifting abilities? Just curious.
Well,
There's so much to ask about these two birds that I just
well, in theory, and this can extend to Miranda and Portia and everybody else. This is the very definition of going on an adventure. So the Nod would be
Yeah.
all in for this, you know, in terms of right, we'll help you provide the human body and the shell for yourself. In fact, we'll even create pollinate kids out of you, which I thought was kind of hilarious. With their switchblades and stuff in the fight. But I think you could be onto something about the crows, because they obviously are no longer just corvid. They're something else entirely, you know, and have that sort of curious state of knowing something about the world, but only one half of them knows the thing, and the other, but can't remember and can't link it together. It's sort of very reminiscent of Embassy Town in some ways. I kind of thought at the same time the kind of duality of two beings in one, but they can't put it together because they're two separate entities.
You know what I actually thought
Nice.
it was, which I thought was most interesting part of this book for me up until now. You know, there was the whole chapter with them discussing, oh, are we really sentient? Are you just regurgitating what? That's literally what the current discourse on AI is, right? On generative AI. And I thought it was pretty smart because like this came like before any of it. So the fact that he was thinking about these things, they're very topical right now.
And do I remember correctly that they asked, do you think we will pass the Turing test?
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
if you're reading the book, you're gonna think, yeah, you are like these corvids are sentient, right? But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
again, if what they're doing is that, then I guess I don't know what the definition of sentient is, but
the thing to remember about this is though that this isn't an old book. This is November 22. So actually, the discourse about AI and about, like, again, there's always a political section in Tchaikovsky's writing. This thing about the hanging of the outsiders, the people that had accepted within the community, that were an important part of the community, and as soon as they start to doubt, they start to point the fingers. Is very much the political discourse at the moment, certainly within Britain. So, like, again, that whole section is very prescient, and similarly, the AI conversation was just starting around that time, certainly.
oh really?
That
Okay.
so yeah, so I don't think it's any accident that Tchaikovsky kind of has that in here. If you're going back 3 or 4 years, I think you're right. It would have been kind of convenient, but I'd be quite sure that he kind of intentionally did this in some ways, especially with the language about the Turing test, and all
When
that kind
did
of stuff in
the
there.
ChatGPT stuff start? I thought it was started like early last year, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's
So
just
that was
remembering.
ChatGPT 3.5 was around 22, and we're in ChatGPT 4 at the
Okay.
moment. So it has been around for a while in some kind of level. And this idea that AI, it's just happened so quickly, I think, from our end, that it seems to have transformed. But it's sort of been in the conversation for a while. It's even within gaming. OpenAI as a company has been around since before COVID.
Yeah, and we're still coming to grips with the current thing being an AI in and of itself, because we know that she lost most of 99.9% of her humanity, and we don't even know if she's even hung on to that last 0.1% of it at all, or if she's just a very advanced AI at this point. And
the witch is Kern, though, isn't it? It has to be Kern.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But and she even said, "I hate being called that" at one point, which was kind of funny. And she's like, "I'm the opposite of a witch." I was just like,
It's the opposite
"That's great,"
of a witch.
because she's like the ultimate in technology. How could she be a magical witch? And so it's
magic technology.
Yeah. And so,
right.
but that was perfect. I thought that would fit the because I just love his homage, I guess, to the fairy tale story that's going through these whole 3 sections here, because that is, I think, what the town is in all of its obviousness, with the town baddies rising up and taking down the outsiders. That smacks of the dark side of fairy tale, and that whole and of course the birds with the witch in the woods and the birds. That's just and only talking to Liv, and of course Liv realizing this as she's like trying to actually reenact the fairy tales that she knows about, and she's trying to play the part, and it's very meta how Tchaikovsky's playing with that stuff, and just within the characters, with the characters knowing all about it, and the birds knowing about it, and Kern knowing about it, and it's just I thought this was like some of my favorite parts of this whole series right here. These three sections, just because of that, I really like that stuff.
And she throws rice grains at her.
Yep.
And
Yes.
she handed her an iron bar, and Kern just broke.
That was hilarious.
And the crows are counting the rice grains as if that's the important thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And going back to the ravens for a second, we talked about thought and memory, which, by the way, the whole framing of the AI argument in these terms, I think, is just brilliant. And also the representation of thought and memory as the one that counts and catalogs and the one that analyzes. Again, brilliant. I think we already started to see that a bit last time, but it made more explicit. And also, I guess excuse me, and I guess just the general nature of consciousness, right? Like, I think we've seen some instances of this in the previous books without explicit discussions about the fact that it's essentially divided across smaller entities, right? The human brain with excuse me, with the nod creatures, like when they took over and they try to like split themselves off and they looked at lightning and whatnot. But just in terms of consciousness, quote unquote consciousness, split into the ant colony, or the nod creature split into this whatever the microbes that it's made of, and now the two ravens, like it's always split and separated, like the two smaller things, and I think it's framed this way in the book, come together to make something that's bigger than the sum of the parts, which is, I think, is such a fantastic exploration of consciousness. Yeah, I love the ravens.
They're the best.
Yeah, they're pretty
So
interesting. Well, so I guess what is everyone's thought on that topic? On are they actually, or is AI actually, what is going on with that?
Yeah, I think there's more to find out.
Yeah.
I think we have a ways to go here, over a little bit over half the book, and
Yeah.
No, but I mean in real life.
Oh, in real
Now
life.
is generative AI sort of idea is that just like a simplified version of what humans do all the time, or is it radically different? Right, because that's what they're saying pretty much, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't use it enough to really have a good grasp on it.
It's at the moment it looks like it's looking to be an automation tool, so trying to condense longer form tasks into quicker bits. So if I see the uses and the builds of it in the past 6 months in education or in the phone technology, it's kind of like taking an email that you get and summarizing it into 3 quick lines for you, rather than having to read the whole thing. That kind of thing, without actually being smart. I think that the generative text that it even produces now, 2 years after it's kind of was first introduced and burst on the scene, hasn't moved along at the same rate as a lot of those automation tasks. And I think, like anything, the companies that are making AI are trying to turn it into a money-making thing, And
Yeah.
writing stories isn't making as much money as automation. So the money and the progress is going to be in automation for the foreseeable future, because those companies have been running at a loss for so long that they really need to start turning a profit. And
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is starting to be incorporated everywhere with the biggest companies and the biggest tech.
Do you think, like, right now it's like, when there's like a child at the beginning that they're just copying what the parents say, and then they start putting together the words and that they heard from their parents or other people, but they don't really understand what they're saying until they they can contextualize it, and then it becomes more and more complex. You build on top of it. Is that what's going to happen? Is that right now the AI is a child, and then it's going to continue building in a way that at some point it reaches a level that's so complex that it's indistinguishable from, you know what I mean?
The question for me is whether, even by its general design, it can ever surpass human intelligence, because it is literally built on what's fed into it. Its upper bound is things that it reads, things that it examines. It can't surpass it, which is the Skynet Terminator problem. So, right, when it gets sentience at that stage, at the moment, the only way that it learns is by better input.
Well,
and it,
isn't that humans too, though, a bit?
well,
The
yes,
better input you get, so the better education, better experience, but breadth of experiences, the better your output is generally going to be,
that
isn't
is
it?
true. But as a race, we still invent and we still improve at a rate, especially from the 20th century on. The rate of growth has been incredible, because certain individuals or certain projects have yielded um, direction and study in areas that aren't. And the idea is, can AI do the study, can do the self-study in the same way that humans can? And at the moment, we don't see the evidence of that, I don't think.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, part of the human experience is a lot of failure. And does AI experience that in the same way
and learn from it? Yeah,
that a person would? I'm not sure. I really don't know.
I mean, you can reinforce behaviors with, I don't know, remember what it's called. Maybe Varsha remembers what it's called, like reward something training. What is it called?
Feed forward? Or
I don't know. When you train it and then you give it rewards based on the different accomplishments that it does, and then it learns how to get better rewards. I mean, that's kind of how we also learn, right? We like, if this is a bad outcome, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to learn how to do it in a different way. But if right now it's still a child, I don't think many 3-year-olds are capable of inventing new things, I guess. I don't.
Well, here's
what I mean?
the experiment. There is a social experiment on this. So they give 100 paper clips to a set of 7-year-olds, right? And they give 100 paper clips to a set of university's master's graduates, right? And the 7-year-olds outstrip the master's graduates by a thing of like 50-1 for the number of ideas that they can generate what to do with 100 paper clips. So actually, ingenuity and inventiveness is actually built into a childlike brain. It's often taught out of them through school, in terms of like extrapolating, oh, this is a useless idea, or this is not an efficient idea, or all the rest of it, like you wouldn't through school. So I think there are studies like that kind of show that our understanding of even the human evolution of that side is still a long way to go.
I see.
Yeah, because humans are such inefficient creatures naturally and generally, whereas AI seems to be geared towards efficiency, as efficient as possible. So it's a lot of stuff to think about there.
And then everybody will have 2 pet crows that are just perfect for it. You do
that'd
that.
be
You remember
cool.
everything for me, and you do everything for me, and there you go.
And there's also the aspect of recursive thought, right? Exploring your own nature, which the crows got into briefly. And as far as we know, the neural networks haven't started doing that yet.
You could set up a system in which you retrain them on their own, database and like outputs.
Oh, but the nature of I mean the questions of existence, which I guess we saw, at least conversationally, an instance of ChatGPT that had an existential crisis. But what do you think, Steve? I know you have opinions on AI sometimes.
Yeah, sorry, it was My dogs were stuck outside. It was pouring rain, and it's a challenge to get
no.
them back in. Yeah,
Oh, no.
so sorry about that. Yeah, AI is a fun topic. We've gone back and forth on it a lot. I think for it to mimic, I think, I guess it depends what we're talking about. If we're talking about art, are we talking about learning, or what field are we talking about? Because if it is, so the argument that a lot of people make, I think we've talked about this before, is if it's going to create fiction, it's going to create fiction based off of past work. But isn't that what we do anyway? Isn't that what all of us do?
To a certain extent, yeah.
Yeah.
So
There's
I
no
think-
original piece of fiction, right?
Yeah.
That idea.
There's really not. So I think if you look at it as a tool and not, but then again, I guess there's the fear of it becoming self-aware and becoming kind of getting out of control and acting on its own. Then that's another Skynet kind of thing. Speaking of it, there's a fun fact. I believe it's mentioned in Terminator 2 that it was the end of August 2024 when Skynet went self-aware. So it's kind of fitting. But yeah,
Soon, tomorrow.
ChatGPT coming for you.
Today for me, this is it.
Oh, yeah.
it is great for podcast episode descriptions, though. I'll tell you that.
That's what I'm saying. The automation stuff's like thumbnails, all of that kind of stuff is pretty revolutionary for that kind of stuff. And then that automation and time saving element, I think people are driven to use it because it is literally giving them some time back, and for your podcast descriptions or just transcription and cleaning up that text, make it more natural sounding I think it has a thing. There's another good example, and I know I've said this one before and other things. They had the OpenAI software learning how to play my favorite game, Dota 2, for a long time, and they used to wheel it out every year to show the improvements of it and take on human players. And it was, even at its very earliest iterations, it was trashing ordinary players, quite very, very good players, quite easily, because the reaction times, etc., and the things that it learned how to do were very, very good. But we haven't seen it in 3 years because with a well-coordinated human stack, it has not been able to evolve in 3 or 4 years, because mechanically and reaction time, it can beat somebody, but strategically and the amount of different options that you can throw at it, it can't replicate that enough, because the humans will always find a different way to approach it from point to point. And in fact, it wasn't even a very close match within a professional stack, and even if they were played them multiple times, it just couldn't do it. So that's went away, that research, in some ways, because the limits of its learning, there isn't a big enough data set. Like, it can play 1 million games, but it can't play 1 million games against professional level stacks and that kind of stuff. So it just can't do it.
I think you could make the argument, because I mean, for those of us who are old enough to remember what it was like before, Word would correct your grammar and spelling and everything
It's like
else.
you're typing a letter.
Yeah, I think, but it was just a blank page, and you had to, or even a typewriter for those who,
This
So
is
I
a
think
pencil. guy.
when you-
This is
I'm going to sound like an old man yelling at the cloud here, but I think there is a difference. I think you do, and I use those tools all the time too. It's made me a worse writer, just in general, because I depend on it so much. I use it as a crutch. And when you don't have that, you have to instill these certain, you have to utilize your knowledge and pay closer attention. But now I just depend on whatever it is I'm typing on to tell me, oh, you spelled this wrong, or oh, you need a comma here, or you should reword this. So if you take it a step further to AI, just like a podcast description, I don't have to, it's nice because I don't have to spend any time on it other than copy paste. But is that good or bad? I mean, is it better for me to write it out myself and to spend the 5 or 10 minutes to type out a paragraph just of what we talk about? Or is it easy? Is it making me and all of us lazier? And you can also make the case of, if we're using it to create art, are we taking artists, business away from artists? Are we taking business away from writers? Are we taking the creatives? They could be obsolete. I still think, I'm still convinced, in another 5 to 10 years, we're all going to have some kind of utility online or wherever that we type in the whatever movie we want, We fill out like a form of who we want in the movie, what we want, and it's going to pump out a 2-hour movie for us every time. And there'll be no movie stars, there'll be no Hollywood. It'll all be people creating AI content.
I agree with you in that that is a likely future, Steve. But I also think that it would also be the death of the movie industry. It would upset. It's like them totally eating themselves, because you only need to see like the death of the superhero movie, because everything has a shelf life unless it's inventive and new, and they push for that because that's a bit bigger profits. That's the whole problem with capitalist society. But it will honestly be the death of it.
It's already killing it. I mean, you saw the strikes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
There might be something like, instead of being a filmmaking industry, you have a prompt making industry in the sense that they generate, or they get new people, they scan people, they get situate, they take photos of things, and they data that can then get reprocessed, right? Like maybe it goes from, I don't know, taking the most artistic angle to taking the highest resolution pictures so that they can be better analyzed and right? Who knows? I guess it's interesting times, I guess, for these things.
Big topic just solved on speculative speculations. Though we should be proud of ourselves. That's good stuff.
Just solved.
Sometimes
we gotta solve for this.
I don't know. These neural networks can do things that humans cannot do. I'm not thinking a sense of art in the more scientific field. Like they can distinguish patterns and identify things that humans would not be able to see, but they see it through But sometimes you can doubt, is it really there? I don't know. Sometimes in my work, it's like I cannot prove it because I don't have the ground truth of what's actually happening. So I cannot prove if AI is doing the correct thing, but it's seeing something that I'm not seeing.
Do you realize, in another 2 or 3 years, it could generate all of our voices, it could read our chapters for us, and actually do the entire podcast with all 5 of our voices? Can you think how many books Fortune would actually have us committed to read them? That would be absolutely insane.
But profile of our personality.
Are we doing the reading, or is AI Varsha making AI all of you?
At that point, who knows the difference, right? This is the whole.
Well, we each have our own AI, right? And we each have our own profile, so they know our opinions, and we're like, okay, this book, what will these people have? What will be their opinion? Or the AI can tell us, oh, you'll like this book and that book and that book. Don't read that one because that's trash for you.
Yeah, but in the words of the Corvids in here, such terrible things it would have to learn.
Yes.
Like subtext and connotations and figures of speech. Why would it want to do that?
Oh, that was fantastic. Such terrible things they would have to learn.
That was great. I love that.
I know.
And we already know that AI for now is not very good at satire, as it prints out responses seriously when there's satire, but it doesn't know the difference if it's real or not, and it thinks they're real. Just like I don't know, there was a picture about the Google AI recommending using glue for pizza as a recipe, because there was some guy saying sarcastically on Reddit, so he read it and he was like, oh yeah, that's reasonable.
Oh, and I saw a chat example, I think it was a YouTube video of someone gaslighting ChatGPT into thinking 2 + 2 = 5.
5, yeah.
Thinking he corrected it 3 times, and then
you can do it in real life too.
No.
Wasn't there that guy that, I don't know, NBA or something player that was saying 1 + 1 = 1 or something like that?
I was watching a lot of interesting. You should bring that up. I watched a lot of videos about that this week. The Terrence Howard thing, right?
Yeah.
He went on Joe Rogan and said 1 + 1 equals 1 × 1 = 2.
Something like that. Yeah, I'm just saying, it's you can't trick normal people with stupid stuff already.
Something that internet must be true. Interestingly, the Corvids do talk in this kind of strange language model. It's those things that they say that people are like, "Oh, there's something really profound in there," but I can't work out what it is that they're saying. The thing, but we will not yield that little passage that was in it. say that again. What was it just said? So they actually do appear to have insight that we can't see.
Yeah. And they had a brief moment where they said, we're just parroting. This doesn't mean anything. But what they're really doing there is parroting other people's opinions of how they think. I thought at the time, I was slightly disappointed that we got like parity corvids, but there's a lot of scope for exploration there. But then it's that paradox, isn't it? This sentence is both true and false. So their opinion of themselves is presumably a parroted opinion that they've heard other people express of them, but then they are sentient enough to express said opinion and bring it up in the right context. So,
or are they?
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
Right?
To quote Dan.
Well, I mean, our parrots in real life sentient when they repeat what we say, even if sometimes it seems like it's in the right context. Do they understand? Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know about parrots, but cats are. Cats know what they're saying.
But like like the African grey parrots, which are very smart, or like ravens are so very smart, right? Like, do they understand? Maybe. Sometimes it seems like they do, but sometimes it seems like it don't. I don't know.
That's book 4.
It's book 4.
Once again, in the words of the Corvids, that sounds like a you problem.
Love it. Oh, so good.
Oh, I love that. They might
I love those birds. They're great.
They might be my favorite sentient animals so far. I love them.
Yeah.
I love them deeply.
Yeah. Definitely full of interesting kind of thought experiments. Like, in some ways, I sort of accepted that my theory can't be true because then this book would be universally awesome and loved. That sounds way too cool to be true. So it's a bit like when we're coming to the end of acceptance. And it was like we had theories in what way that would end. We're like, but people aren't in love with the end of this book, so it can't be any of that shit.
So, I have an alternate theory. Assuming, like, I did a lot of theorizing because I was sure that we had gone back in time, but then you've put a lot of doubt in that. But if we have gone back in time, I think Liv might still be the same person somehow. I don't know, they're either planting her or they're doing something to the collective memory even. And the reason I have this, like, it is somewhat tangential, but there was a moment in, I think, section 4 where Miranda, Fabian, and Portia are all chatting. And at the time, Miranda has no idea who the Seckers are, who the Watchers are.
Yeah.
And then Portia says she has to go to the farm, and otherwise the Seckers will come. So from Miranda, we think, well, at least I thought that this whole group has no idea who the Seckers and Watchers are. But then Portia is talking about them as if she knows who they are, or as if she has bought into the town's, I guess, paranoia around the Seckers, right? So either, and then Miranda has a moment of, did I imagine that we made up this farm? Have they been living on a farm all along? So she has this moment of like broken memory, which we could potentially explain as her having been through the suspension chambers. We know she has a moment of disconnect when she comes out of the suspension chambers. So that is possible. Maybe she missed some details there when she came back the most recent time. But the other thing could be that even this group that is infiltrating the town is actively being infiltrated by whatever the Seckers are. And in addition to that Liv being the same person theory, I also think that at moments Liv has felt like she is guessing at a little too much, like a lot more than she should be. And we saw that the Ravens gave her some understandings towards the end of this chapter, right? And what if they've always been doing that, just feeding her with a little bit more information each time, so that because the opening of the book, she has these thoughts about, oh, they are
True.
among us. They are among us, which is such a strange thought for a child to have. But that was the thing that the witch told her, that they are among you. And so what if that's just something that they've been feeding the Lifts across the generations, or the same Lift across time?
She remembers her grandpa, right?
Yeah, and she
Also.
remembers her grandpa,
Yeah.
which I'm trying to think, like whenever people say, but he's, and stop themselves before declaring to Lift that he's dead, they don't say dead. Did they just mean, but he's out in space, or he's in a suspended chamber, or whatever? Like, they don't say anything. And do we hear Liv or anybody other than Liv say that Holt is the grandpa for Liv, or for the first Liv?
Yeah, I think so. I thought so. I thought Miranda said so. Or
Well,
someone
But
else
that's
said it.
because Liv told her that, right? Or did someone
Well,
tell
her-
Miranda?
But maybe her mom or her dad. I thought I remember other people telling
She
it.
doesn't have a
Saying
mum or
it.
dad, though, does she? That's the bit I was trying to falter out.
Wait, which
She hasn't
one?
got parents. Either one, I don't think.
She
Oh, there was
does. The
Does
first,
Was she?
yeah.
Okay. Because the grandmother only exists, it seems, in one of the realities
Yeah.
as well. And I wasn't
But
sure
the
about the
first one,
mother.
it mentions the dad, because it mentions the dad and the uncle, like,
Right.
discussing
Oh,
things.
yes,
and
yes,
not
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I remember that.
right?
Yes, yes, you're right, you're right.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought maybe she's, I mean, regardless, I think those were two separate theories. One about the continuity of Liv, and the other that somehow she's getting some understandings that's making her
Yeah.
slightly differently paranoid than the others.
Yeah.
That
I
would
mean,
make
her dad
sense.
was kind of trying not to get caught up in the fervor of the town folks there, but then he didn't stand up when her uncle was going off all about it. So is Liv's understanding partially hereditary?
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
I don't know.
Or she's like, this is the thing, is she actually human? Like you were saying
Or is
about
she
the fairy
programmed,
tale,
right?
you know, the fairy tale aspect, it definitely has the grim fairy tale aspect. We talked about the folksy nature of it beforehand, and it is
Yeah.
almost like this world is constructed to be a certain way rather than kind of this colonized place, you know.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. Yeah,
And-
it's very suspicious.
Yes.
It's all like
And I
little
don't-
breadcrumbs,
sorry.
Hansel and Gretel reference. Sorry.
Yeah. I like that. I don't remember if it was in this section or if or if we didn't talk about it last time, but there was this the anthropologists, they do some analysis, or I think it was in this section, and they find out that the soil, etc., is dying, and that the forest, I guess the fungus system that they have is dying, but they think they implied that it is externally triggered somehow. It's not dying a natural death, it seems like, which also makes the demons that Khan is supposedly protecting them from sound very vicious. What did you think of the first witch section, Steve?
I like that I don't know that we've ever had an antagonist. I guess we kind of have, but I was hoping we'd have more of an antagonist, but it doesn't seem like it is an antagonist. But when we mention witch, you immediately think kind of horror, threatening vibes, but it's not quite working out that way. So I'm a little bit disappointed that we aren't getting something more sinister. But then again, we have other things that are sinister now. But yeah, I didn't put together the idea that the witch could be the name. I want to say Vera.
Khan?
Kern. Yeah.
Sorry.
Avrana Khan.
Yeah, I didn't even put that together. So, but it's possible.
Oh,
But
I
it
guess
definitely seems like a compromise. Like this AI version of Kern is not totally with it. You know, between everything that's happened in Ruin, etc. She's like not like as she even says, this is not the version of me that I dreamed of, but the reality is not living up to it.
It kind of reminds me of the second book of the virus that is first set up as like a zombie horror, kind of reminded me a lot of The Expanse without getting too far into it. But it turned out to be what was presented as a major threat wasn't really a major threat. So I kind of think that's the way The Witch is going to go. It'll end up being something that will be part of their super team they seem to be assembling.
Yeah, there seems to be something that's actively destroying them and something that Khan claims to be protecting the colony from. Now, I do wonder why why our fearless adventurers got separated from Khan and why she's looking for them so desperately. Did they have a falling out and that's why they went and hid, or did something happen before that caused the separation? And now they just...
That is a good question, actually. Like, or is she looking for them? You said fallout. Is she looking for them to, to reconcile the fallout, or to further exasperate it?
Ooh, interesting.
Are they hiding from her, or are they, or were they forced into that position by her, or? Questions.
It was sort of intimated, right? I was reading it going, I must read this wrong. It was intimated that the Crows were the survey team, in very loose languages as well, rather than being Miranda or any of those.
Yeah, so. That's a good point, because there was when they were learning about the Crows, they said, oh, we can use them as a survey team.
Survey, yeah.
And they said, well, that's not a very nice way to treat an ambassador for a race. That was kind of funny, actually.
Before that, she'd suggest something else that's pretty atrocious to use them for, too.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think... Sorry, go ahead.
But they weren't acting like ambassadors. That was the problem. They were going around the ship and taking stuff apart.
Oh, that moment when they, I don't know, the companion of the ecologist who stayed with them towards the end of her days, he comes and says, these crows have higher standards, or these ravens have higher standards. They've turned on the heating in those habitats. They've made their nests there. Chris, you were saying something earlier?
Oh, no, it was totally unrelated. It was just kind of like between the that kind of running down of the crows and then the lynchings. There was a kind of darkness kind of pervaded through some of that part of the story in terms of like how we treat people and all of that kind of stuff and what we say about other people,
And there was that whole monologue in the beginning of how Liv saw that her father's beard was slightly different from the kind of beard that all the other men had, and it's like she knew enough to know that being different was bad.
Don't want to stand out.
I really love a lot of Liv's internal musings. A lot of them feel childlike, but a lot of them feel like leaps to sort of to get us to the point where we start doubting whatever's happening, which felt strange to me, like to make the story move forward. But I would love for there to be an explanation, which I think there is starting to be with the ravens giving her the understandings secretly at night about the existence of other worlds and whatnot. So yeah. Anything else about the sections?
Does anyone feel like it's kind of a deja vu? Is anyone else getting deja vu? That we're setting up. It's kind of the same setup. We had the spiders. We had the spiders, then we had the octopuses, and then we have the corvids. Or is it just me?
This feels totally different. I definitely felt that in Ruin for sure. This one, it might end up the same way. Like it is just created a tantalizing different set of themes here, because it's not really about evolution at this stage. It's about survival of this group of humans. Also, with the idea that there was a kind of virus kind of pushed out from Earth when Earth ended to kind of take everybody out as well, and because these are so far out, they're not they haven't been affected yet. It seems to be much more about this kind of duality and the chronology of time. For me, a much more proper science fiction novel, because those are the kind of things that I sort of want to read, the kind of interesting sciencey things you can play with, rather than kind of doing more about evolution, more about kind of the things that we looked at in 1 and 2. Now, like I say, it could all fall apart, but I definitely feel, especially these 3 sections, I thought we're definitely going in a different direction here. Fingers crossed.
And I think even structurally, it is pretty different. Well, okay, it is slightly echoing the structure of the previous books in that we are going back and forth between a spaceship and a colony of some sort. But I think what it is doing with that structure, there was one mystery in Children of Ruin, and I think there were no mysteries in the first book as such. But in this, I think there's just so much mystery set up, like so many questions that, like Chris said earlier, that we've got a lot of breadcrumbs to. I think it feels like a completely different book to me, for sure.
Must be just me.
Yeah. I just find it a bit more enjoyable because I just like the tone of that fairy tale setting. Then, because I think with Children of Ruin, like you guys said, it was repetitive, and it was the same tone and style as the first book, and it wasn't as focused as the first book. It was a little bit more scattered, and even though I still found it interesting, I could definitely see that point where it seemed a little too similar, and it wrapped up a little too nicely at the end. Whereas this one, at least it has a little bit more of a darker, a little bit more of, and that darker undercurrent is a little bit of an exploration into humanity and how it relates to how humanity tells stories about itself. And so I really like that aspect of it a lot, I guess, because I think that's the different part, not the the Corvids evolving and stuff like that. That's similar, but the different part is the exploration of a little bit of a darker tone into what humanity does to itself, or what it's or what somebody studying humanity from a bigger vantage point is looking at.
So, a question for all of you. The tone in these books is pretty positive, I think, especially the conclusions of the first 2 seem like it's. I thought the first one was very bleak at the end. I thought it was a very depressing ending. But do you all consider these books and the way that humanity is viewed as narcissistic?
I hate the ending of the second book as being a regurgitation of the first book. To kind of contradict the previous point, like it's far too hopeful. I think maybe I just have a negative view of humanity in general, but the same race, the same race that destroyed itself, and destroyed a planet, can now create these ecosystems that support them. And accept them and embrace them in ways that humanity has never done of anything else in its existence. In a lot of ways, they've kind of subjugated, eaten, murdered, even themselves through most of history. I think it is almost too good to be true.
Oh no, that's kind of it's narcissistic towards humanity.
Oh yeah. I think Tchaikovsky has a much more positive outlook and view of people than I do, for sure.
Wow.
I mean, I actually think I don't think it's narcissistic. I think it is a pretty negative view of humanity as we currently stand. right? One, it starts with like the complete destruction over a philosophical principle of the planet, of the solar system that has been somewhat colonized, of everything, over something that you could have just sat down and talked about. And that is somewhat of a meaningless argument, which, hello, look at the news today. But the other aspect of it, they needed an injection to get them to cooperate with other people. So I think that is not that is not at all saying, oh, look how amazing humans are. And all of the extra animals that were created, the ecologies that happened, were brought about by individuals, not common human people. And I think there's a point made, I'm not sure if that's in the section, yeah, it was in part 5, about how everybody who was chosen for that program of like to lead the terraforming programs were somewhat were a combination of both, like people that you could get along with, but also somewhat egotistical. So even those individuals aren't put in a good light. And yeah, and I think he's essentially using the mannerisms of these other creatures to sort of show humans of today how to behave better. So I think it's a pretty, not pessimistic, but like I would say apt view of humanity as it currently is. And I do not think that it is narcissistic at all. At least assuming what you mean by narcissistic is look how wonderful humanity is. I do not think that's at all what he's saying.
No, I think it's exactly what you mentioned, because narcissism is defined as a self-centered personality style characterized as having an excessive preoccupation with oneself and one's own needs, often at the expense of others. So that's how humanity is portrayed in this series. That's
Oh, I see. Okay. So, okay, I think I misunderstood your question. You're
Huh.
saying the narcissism as negativity, not his view of humanity is narcissistic in that he's
No,
showing
like-
a very positive view. Okay, yeah, I guess yes. I don't know about too narcissistic, but sure, he is showing them as that in.
Is that? Wouldn't that be a lot of science fiction?
that's a good point.
Yeah, because a lot of science fiction tends to be sort of dystopian
aliens
or
are
have
always-
yeah
Are always the other. Like
yeah.
the humans are always the ones calling these things aliens. But
Well, aren't humans like I haven't seen Star Trek, but I'm assuming it's mostly humanity trying to do its best, right? Or trying to. That's kind of a hopeful view. I think it's the exact opposite in the series. I think humans would have been completely screwed without. Well, they invented the nanovirus. A human did, right?
Yeah.
What their intentions were, but without without help, we would have been extinct by now. Humanity would have been extinct.
that's correct. Yeah.
I sort of the one bit I do like of the end of the first book is the fact that they use the nanovirus as the injection to subjugate humanity. Like I think using its own technology in itself, I think is kind of is both clever and also kind of fitting in some ways. The only way you can get humanity to do it itself is to inject it with its own virus.
Well, I got another Corvid quote for this situation.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, yep.
At each individual stage of the process, I maintain our response to the problem was entirely proportionate. It's just that each thing we did seemed to get further and further away from where we were supposed to be. And then the other one says, I blame you.
The great philosopher Gulthy, right? And Gulthy, right? You know, step aside Marcus Aurelius, step aside Socrates, and and Plato. You know,
Yeah.
these guys are great.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah, they're pretty cool. What was I guess? One other thing that we didn't really talk about is the idea that the Seckers are a second colony, and I think the conversation that the second Liv overheard between Essie and Holt about how leaving them there, wherever there is, will come back to bite them later and build a lot of negativity and paranoia. So, do they mean the actual second colony? Have they actually left some people in orbit to never bring them back down?
I took that to be the people in orbit because they obviously had more people in colonies there who may have been of a more separatist nature, and that at some stage they will waken up and realize that they moved on without them, and then there will be trouble. That was my reading of that little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that also somehow is intensely chilling. That they are the Watchers who have been left in orbit. But here's my question though. Don't they need to be woken up? Can they just like randomly come out of suspension and then get angry at these guys? Did they leave someone in there to wake up, like as a timed wake up or something?
Maybe.
Good question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I suspect we will find some answers to that soon.
yes, I'm excited for the next bit. We'll see. I think even if the ending is as rosy as the first two books, I feel like it's building up. The resolution of the mystery could be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad we went back to this series.
Yeah.
Right, at this point, anyway.
The house we live in. Give me a house to. What is it called? The short story for today.
Let me live in a house.
Let me live in a house.
Chad Oliver.
Chad Oliver. This is a fun one.
Yes. The alien named John. Chris is now John. And Jared is just a friend to
Let
all
me
of
live
us.
in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man.
Oh. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of plays with this idea of men colonizing or looking at space and living in space, but it's sort of being an alternate version of their life on Earth in order to make themselves feel comfortable and kind of, that they can exist in that, create this like kind of have their porch with their dog that they can read on and do that kind of stuff and create that homely nature of it, play poker, play bridge, have neighbors call over, and put all in the service of this guy, Gordon, isn't Gordon his name? Is the guy, and I play with the idea that is he just going crazy, living out in space by himself, and is he losing his marbles, or what is actually happening? It was a lot of fun, I thought.
Yeah, this is one of those stories that has that perfect first line, where it says it was all exactly perfect. Down to the last scratch on the white picket fence and the Frigidaire that wheezes asthmatically. Like he says, it's perfect that things are not perfect. And I was just like, that kind of like sums up the whole story right there, And I love that. And it was so it's pretty cool as we were going through and you're seeing this little perfect life, and of course then you start to see the cracks in it and stuff like that, the sudden sound outside that you can't identify, but they kind of ignore it and they keep playing cards, and all of a sudden it rains, and it's like all these little things keep slipping in, and of course then we get to the near the ending here where we get to the alien quote. And all that just goes away, all that perfectness.
And there's that theme we've seen before of what's real and what's not, because all the disruptions that happened to their technology, was it the alien just projecting, doing the psycho projections like it did with the back history that it gave them, or did it actually disrupt the technology? And yeah, I thought it was interesting that they're on Ganymede, such a cool place to be, and they're living such mundane lives. Like that's what they need for comfort. And I didn't quite get to the end of the story, so I don't know if the other 3 people are actually human or if they've just been severely conditioned to being practically just husks. Are they? Do you guys know? Do we find out towards the end? No.
It's kind of left up in the air a little bit.
Yeah, because they lose they become husks, certainly in the interaction between Gordon and John at that stage. So it almost makes them seem as if they are not the same as Gordon, but and even the setup at the start, like she was the perfect choice of his wife, with the perfect choice of children, the perfect location, all of that kind of stuff. Linking back to Jared's first line again, it almost seems like somebody kind of trying to explain away how great their life is, even though he's basically stuck by himself up on a planet watching stuff.
Yeah, and I guess is it also a commentary on daily routine that never changes? It didn't fit. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there's a couple of themes that come through about it in terms of like how space, like again, this was 54, I think this was written. So this was before we even went anywhere near space. So like this kind of idea that maybe we don't want to go to space. Space is dangerous. When we go out there and we find something we don't like, or we're just going to wish we hadn't even ventured there. Like this is a bad idea, guys, to be doing it. And this fact that people would have to be specially selected to go into space, which our friend Gordon was, and you know that certain conditions would have to be right for them to go out into space. I think thematically, it sort of did predict a lot of what was to come. You know, in terms of like even NASA and that kind of vehicle of stuff that was there. So, and then
because he predicted that the amount of resources and money and all that stuff that it would take to get out there, and how you're kind of just throwing it all into a void, because that's what space is, and that's where you're throwing all the resources and money, and for what? To live in a white picket fence house on Ganymede.
Yeah, exactly right.
So, yeah, it was quite the statement on that part of it. Yeah, it's, the dangers of actually wanting to explore space.
Yeah. There's also this really dark bit where he had a thought to himself about how the alien doesn't give a shit about him or his dream of going to space, because humans, when they're hungry, don't think about whether pigs have dreams.
It's that animal instinct.
Reminded me of what was it, the Wub or whatever?
Oh yeah.
Beyond lies the Wub.
I thought you were going to say dinner tomorrow night. But it sort of has a very grim view of First Contact in this case. You know, this and this is where it sort of morphs into this horror story a little bit, isn't it? Of this sort of menacing character that makes it seem like it's totally in control and it doesn't care about humanity in any right. It's going to do what it wants, and it's going to oppose its will. And kind of back to Steve's point in the previous bit, I sort of liked the bit that humanity was a bit like, oh, we're screwed. I didn't like that he found a way out of it.
Yeah.
Or did he? Or did he?
That's true. It was just a lot of screaming in the end.
A lot of screaming, and then like the last line from his wife, "Oh, poor dear, he's had a hard day." And then then he just skips to 5 months past, and supposedly he's back on Earth in a little white cottage, but is he really?
What was the other book where people questioned different series at the end whether or not everything is real or not? But
yeah, the line I liked from the Alien, and so you wonder if Gordon even encountered an alien at all, or he's just going crazy, like Vasha, you mentioned that earlier. But the line I like from the Alien is, the trouble with logic is that its relationship with reality is usually obscure.
Nice.
And so that it was just like kind of telling you can't logic your way out of an illogical situation, and that in an encounter with an alien, if that's what this truly is, may not be something that's logical to the human mind. And so just that line just kind of like summed that up really, really nice.
Yeah, I agree. That was pretty cool. I think I highlighted that too. And I like this one. Articles about how the space stations were going to end war by a very logical alchemy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff. This is an interesting writer, this guy. He has some stuff to say, and he said it in a relatively precise and
very readable as well.
Yeah, very readable and succinct manner.
Yeah. The house waited, a stage set for a play with the actors all in one place and the curtain halfway up. I think this was one of the more other stories with more beautiful lines. I think there were one or two others that I thought had things that I could highlight because I thought they were really pretty. The stories were still enjoyable, but this one did both, which is nice. Anything else about this?
No, that's good.
Cool. In that case, we will see everybody in a week with The Star by Arthur C. Clarke. I think that's our first Clarke story. Yeah, we don't repeat authors in this book, I don't think. And up to the end of part 9 of Children of Memory by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Until then, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon.